Welcome to Unit 2 of the MOOC on Transitioning to Value-Based Care. This is the first lecture in this unit, and we're going to look at the components of value-based care more closely, consider what barriers must be overcome for transitioning to value-based care, and address the leadership necessary to make value-based care successful. In the first lecture, we'll talk about trends we're seeing in the value-based care payment models and cover the CMS value-based care offerings. We'll also introduce you to what the industry at large considers the key elements needed for transitioning to value-based care. In the second lecture for Unit 2, then, we will focus specifically on leadership needs for transitioning. We looked at this slide distinguishing fee-for-service and value-based care in Unit 1. But just as a reminder, we are shifting from paying for volume of medical services rendered under the fee-for-service payment model to paying for value to improve the delivery of health care, health, and the experience of care, which is the triple aim set of goals for value-based care. CMS and private sector commercial health plans have embraced value-based care and are starting with adding foundational payments to volume reimbursement, known as pay for performance, and then slowly moving to financial risk, where either providers share in the reward only, which is called upside risk and not any downside risk, or share in both up and downside risk. Upon completion of this lecture, you should feel very comfortable with the concepts of volume versus value, medical versus health, and alternative payment models that either are superimposed on fee-for-service or start to shift financial risk. So let's look at some of the trends we're seeing with respect to value-based payment models. First, CMS is superimposing new payment elements on top of fee-for-service for most of its currently used forms of payment in value-based care. To make the transition easier for providers who as yet may not have the information infrastructure or other capabilities to predict the level of risk they may be capable of managing. These issues include the ability to assess the level of risk in their patients, consider workflow changes to reduce cost, refer patients to only specialists who are also engaged in value-based care and can demonstrate quality and cost savings, which is called a narrow network of specialists to whom to refer patients, and better coordinate care and promote healthy lifestyles in their patients. The intended trade-off in value-based care is that the more quality time spent with patients and the more coordination of care performed, the healthier patients will be, and for this, providers should be rewarded. CMS initiatives, including pay for performance, accountable care organizations or ACOs, and other forms of payment have been geared to making the transition easier. A number of different models have been created as pilot tests, if you will, in order to determine what works best. Although this is appreciated, the variety can make it challenging for organizations who find that the variation often leads to inconsistencies across CMS programs. And of course, federal initiatives are never very easy to wrap your arms around, so to speak. CMS initiatives also generally have complex reporting requirements that many, especially small provider settings, have difficulty understanding, although CMS is also addressing this as well. So far, about a third of the CMS accountable care organizations have received savings, but less than 1% of those ACOs were full risk models. It must be understood that all upside and no downside risk motivates organizations to only avoid loss rather than to take risk. It is not always intuitive, but as more ACOs and providers in general join riskier models, savings will actually increase. CMS initially was keen on bundled payments as a means to move to fuller risk models. These initiatives underwent some political tweaking initially, but today bundled payments are growing, both in the Medicare payment arena and in the commercial health plan area. This is probably because bundles are somewhat easier for providers to understand and implement rather than trying to address all potential areas of care. Most private commercial health plans also mix fee for service and other models of value based care, but they got a somewhat slower start on bundled payments than CMS. Today, these health plans tend to be a bit ahead of providers in willingness to adopt value based care payments. However, there is little difference in adoption rates between plan-centric, those initiated or led by a health plan, versus provider-centric models, those initiated by a provider. Size and location also seems to matter in transitioning to value-based care. Large providers and plans are adopting value-based care more than small providers and plans because they are more likely to have supporting infrastructure and are more willing and able to take greater risks and generally results in greater reward. California has had a significant amount of capitation for many years, primarily due to the presence of Kaiser's Health Maintenance Organization. As such, the West Coast tends to be ahead in value-based care, followed next by the East Coast, and with the Midwest being the most conservative in adopting value-based care, except in major cities such as Chicago and some states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and Ohio. Value-based care, however, is still predicted to eclipse fee-for-service by 2020, although this may be wishful thinking on the part of CMS.